Okay, so tonight I have been tasked with going over the last 3 love language lessons all in one night. I was told to keep it no later than 8:30, but I'm not going to make us stay till 8:30 if we're done, okay? There's no sense in that. So what we're going to try to cover, I don't know, I had told Aaron last night, I was like, I wonder who's read all these chapters because of all 3 of them being together. But we've already covered words of affirmation. We've covered quality time. And then the last 3 are receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch, okay? So we're going to kind of go through those. I gave you all a packet. So as I'll tell you what page we're on for that as we get to it. And please, obviously this is not a packed house, so we can be intimate here with what we share, and we don't have to, if anything stands out to you or you have any input on anything or have something that you want to discuss or explore more, then okay. And then this one's an extra one, Michelle, in case you guys need. So that's what we're gonna do, okay? Does anybody have anything to share about it? The first 2 love languages, because I know it's weird. We cover it, every month, so it feels a little bit like it was a while ago that we met. Anybody have anything? All right, so we're going to go into receiving gifts. So this is specifically a love language in which a person experiences emotional wholeness through well-chosen gifts. Some people, they light up when they receive a present. Some people, it's not that big of a deal to receive a gift. So that's pretty much a good indicator if that's your primary love language. So a question for whomever would like to share. What has been the best gift you've ever received? It doesn't have, no one's going to hold you to it if you realize later that there was something else better, but what is, one of your top gifts you've ever received? Anybody? I know y'all have received presents. Michael, what was your top gift you've ever received? Hannah? Jennifer?
I've never really gotten gifts throughout my life, but there is one thing that my grandma would do during Christmas time, is she would take these big boxes and she would fill it with everything you could possibly think of. Toilet paper, paper towels, underwear, deodorant.
All the things.
Just anything and everything. Candy. It's just awesome to open a big box.
That's good. Kyle, what's been one of the best gifts you've ever gotten?
A couple years ago, I got some of my grandpa's shirts.
Mm.
Probably the most memorable.
Yeah. Okay. I'll get to y'all. So we know who gave it to you. We know it was grandma. Probably your mom or your grandma gave you that. And so the circumstances for both of y'all, it sounds like it was because it was something that meant something so much at that time, or there was just this emotional attachment to what you were receiving. So that's what made the gift special. So look at page 1. Y'all, I was so proud that I came with this little packet. You don't even know. I was like, oh my gosh, I've never been more prepared for anything in my whole life. So we're covering those first couple questions. And so what are some underrated gifts that can be just as meaningful as big, expensive presents? So like just to play off what you said, Jennifer, a roll of toilet paper, right? A roll of toilet paper isn't that big of a deal. But if you're in the middle of really needing a roll of toilet paper, that might be the world to you in that moment. So it depends on what the circumstances are, what it is. It doesn't have to be a big, expensive thing. If your love language are gifts, then it could literally be my love language is all the things, to be honest with you. I'm really needy. But when I was walking through Disney World, and I feel like God gave this to me himself, it was just a beautiful moment. I looked down, and it sounds really silly, but I looked down, there's a leaf from a tree, and there's a Mickey Mouse head stamped into the leaf. And literally, I've been to Disney World all these times. I have never seen anything like that. And I picked it up and I was like, Aaron, God did this for me. That was my little present. And so it's in my visor in the car as just a reminder to me in that moment. you know, you can get more expensive things at a place like Disney World, obviously, but that is actually like my top 5 favorite things I've ever gotten from there. And it was something that didn't cost anything, but it felt meaningful to me, right, in that moment. So one of the things that I think in relationships that a person can struggle with is if you are married or with someone, which I keep saying married because it's always easier to translate sometimes relationships into married relationships, but translate it into whatever relationships are most important to you, right? So it's easy to give a gift if your primary love language is gift giving, right? But if that is not your primary love language and the person you're with it is, you feel like you're wasting money by always having to buy something, right? For that person to show you affection. And you don't necessarily feel like it's a good investment because you think, I could be using this money. Like I think of my son. There are some things he'll spend money on, but for the most part, every dollar has somewhere it could go, and it's an investment. And so I've had to remind him that sometimes it's nice to spoil the person you're with, even if you don't feel like they necessarily need what they're buying. I don't have to tell Aaron that anymore. He kind of knows that's a losing battle. So go to page 2 in your pamphlet, your packet, whatever. So this is something for you to do. This is for you to take home. It's not for you to do right now, but just something for you to take with you to kind of, because I know we're kind of smooshing this together, but to be deliberate. So in these boxes are where you can put a few important gifts that you've been given. I know I put you on the spot, but just think about a few really important things that you've been given in your life and put why you feel like that's meaningful to you. So if it, like for me, I would put that leaf at Disney because, right, and whenever I picked up the leaf, do you know it started playing in the middle of Epcot? If he says it, I believe it. Like it was a Christian song that was playing in Epcot. And Disney World is not a Christian place. It was playing in Epcot when I picked up the leaf. So it was like an extra, here's a present and a kiss at the same time. And so that's why it was meaningful to me. So that's what you have to take with you. A gift is something you can hold in your hand and say, look, someone was thinking of me. That's what makes gifts so special because it's something like sometimes you can forget words or whatever. Quality time sometimes passes. But if someone gives you a bracelet, you might look down in the middle of a rough day and say, but they think of me, and that matters in the moment. A gift itself, it's a symbol of a thought. It's a symbol of something deliberate that someone has done and acted to do. It's just important to know that that person has thought of you, and it's an expression of love. It's an expression of love even if it isn't your primary love language, but if it is, that's huge. Gifts are a visual symbol of love. So just a reminder, and it doesn't matter if, finances are tight, if you have exponential amount of money to spend. It doesn't have to be an expensive thing. It's just the deliberate thought that matters. So in 2 Corinthians 8:12, it says, if the willingness is there, the gift is acceptable according to what one has, not according to what one doesn't have. So it's not an impossible situation. It's just deliberate thought. So what is the key to making any gift a valuable expression of love? Is that a hard question? What is the key to making any gift a valuable expression of love? Like, what do you think? Yeah, delivery, deliberate thought. Yes. Transaction. Yeah. Yeah. So those are all really good points because that's true. What if you aren't a gift giver and it doesn't come naturally to you? But you're in relationship no matter what the relationship is with someone who it is. Does that mean just because it doesn't come naturally to you, you have an out? No. I mean, that's the thing is that, and even more so, so when Aaron and I were first married, he is not a stuff person. He's never been a stuff person. He doesn't require a whole lot to be happy. And I like stuff. I've always liked stuff. And so, I would, Aaron's like, if you need it, I don't have a problem getting it. But if you don't need it, why do you need another one? You know, that was always his thing. But so I realized, like, there were times that he would surprise me with things that I knew it didn't come naturally to him to just splurge on something like that specifically, but he did because he knew that that was something that I would appreciate. So if it isn't your primary love language, sometimes that even speaks more to the person who it is when you give the gift. Does that make sense? So if it doesn't come naturally to you, congratulations. You've just made the first step to becoming great in that relationship because you can speak different love languages, and it shows effort when you try. In Proverbs 11:24-25, it says, "One man gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly and comes to poverty. A generous man will prosper. He who refreshes others will himself be refreshed." So it seems like in the word, it's just telling us over and over again how important it is to give in relationships. And if we give, we're not always talking about money here. We're just talking about deliberate thought. If we give, it will be given and we'll be refreshed. But if you hold thinking that you're actually going to be able to keep more, you're actually going to come to poverty. And maybe not necessarily poverty financially, but poverty in spirit, poverty in relationships. So the promise based off of that scripture, if you choose to learn and speak the language of giving, is what? Give and you shall receive, right? So go to page 3 in your packet, the next one. All right, so this is just, and again, you can change that. This is specifically says spouse, but you can change it to whomever you are in relationship with. Friendships, parental relationships, dating, marriage, whatever. So if your spouse's primary love language is receiving gifts, you don't have to wait for a special occasion to express your love. Any time is a good time to give a thoughtful gift. And the more appropriate the gift, the bigger its impact will be. So it actually puts a couple occasions on there. So you can see someone is having a bad week. What could you do for them as far as the gift is concerned? Like, so it could be, I was walking on my nightly walk or whatever, and I saw this flower, it made me think of you, or something like that. Something that they can tangibly touch that matters, okay? So that's something that you can kind of refer back to. So if the person you love has a primary love language of gifts, even if you aren't a spender, gift giving may be the best investment you can make because you're investing in relationship and filling their love tank. With a full tank, they will reciprocate. And if both emotional needs are met, your marriage or whatever relationship will take on a new dimension. Because that's the thing, is that car person in here, if the tank's empty, it's not going to run. It doesn't matter how beautiful the car. It doesn't matter how well everything else is functioning. If something as basic as the oil tank is empty or the gas tank is empty, right, then it won't run. So that's how you need to think. I literally have said love tank to Aaron probably so many times in our married life. He probably has a tick about it. But it's just so true because the visual of it, you have to keep it full. Just like he said on the way here, "Babe, do I need to pull into the gas station and fill up the tank?" It's something that deliberate. You need to think about it and be that cognizant of it because it's that important. An intangible gift that sometimes speaks more loudly than words is the gift of self or of presence. So the story in the book for that, I felt like it really, it was probably the best way to explain it. So not necessarily gifts or just stuff. Sometimes it's just being there for someone whenever they need you in that moment. So that's an intangible gift. Someone once told, and he's talking to Dr. Chapman, said, "My husband loves softball more than he loves me." "Why do you say that?" I inquired. "On the day our baby was born, he played softball. I was lying in the hospital all afternoon while he played softball," she said. "Was he there when the baby was born? He stayed long enough for the baby to be born, but 10 minutes afterward, he left. It was awful. It was such an important moment in our lives. I wanted us to share it together. I wanted Tony to be there with me." That baby was now 15 years old, and she was talking about the event with all the emotion as though it had happened yesterday. So he probed further. "Have you based your conclusion that Tony loves softball more than he loves you on this one experience?" And she said, "No. On the day of my mother's funeral, he also played softball." Did he go to the funeral? Yes, he did. He went to the funeral, but as soon as it was over, he left to get to his game. I couldn't believe it. My brothers and sisters came to the house with me, but my husband was playing softball. Later, I asked Tony about these two events. He knew exactly what I was talking about, and he said, I knew she would bring that up. I was there through all the labor, and the baby was born. I took pictures. I was so happy. I couldn't wait to tell the guys on the team. But my bubble was burst when I got back to the hospital that evening. She was furious with me. I couldn't believe what she was saying. I thought she'd be proud of me for telling the team. And when her mother died, she probably didn't tell you that I took off work a whole week before she died and spent that week at the hospital and at her mother's house doing repairs and helping out. After she died and the funeral was over, I felt I had done all I could do. I needed a breather. I like to play softball, and I knew that would help me relax and relieve some of the stress I'd been under. I thought she would want me to take a break. I had done what I thought was important to her, but it wasn't enough, and she'll never let me forget those 2 days. She says I love softball more than her. It's ridiculous. So, two same experiences, but two completely different versions of what happened, right? He was a sincere husband who failed to understand the tremendous power of presence. He thought he was there, but in the very moment, and I think that everybody in here, if you've been through any degree of trauma in whatever capacity, just someone being there sometimes just means everything. Just the power of presence. So that's something that we should be more deliberate about, depending on what the people in our lives are going through, that they might just want us to be there. Sorry, I have 3 books. So, being there when the person you're in a relationship when they need you speaks loudly to the one whose primary love language is receiving gifts. Physical presence in time of crisis is the most powerful gift you can give if their primary love language is receiving gifts. So this is different from quality time. This is, I know you're going through something, or I know that this is a big event and I'm just going to be here with you. This is a gift I'm giving you of just me being present. That's different from quality time. And because in this, your body becomes the symbol of your love, just you being there, right? Does anybody have anything to say so far? That story kind of impacted me because I do feel like, sometimes we have all the want to do well in relationship, but for some reason it just might not be going right. And it could be because the same story is happening, but from 2 different vantage points. And so things just, it just needs to come into alignment. And so Proverbs 25:14 says, like clouds and wind without rain is a man who boasts of gifts he does not give. What's the worst thing in the world? To know someone has the ability to give you something and they just choose not to? That stinks. Like to just know someone can and then they just won't. That's the worst. Have you insisted that you're giving enough of yourself, but you've actually been depriving someone of just your presence? So that's the thing. Like you might give, and I'm guilty of this too, because right now in my present life circumstances, time is my biggest, commodity of what I don't have and don't seem to have enough of. And so I could give money maybe a little, maybe a little bit. But time itself might be what I would have a hard time coming by. But sometimes that, just your presence is what people need. And if physical presence is important to you in relationship, verbalize it. Because like in this instance, in this book, 15 years later, and they were still on different pages. And they needed an intermediary to communicate effectively to each other. They were both feeling very strong things. But they did not verbalize. She didn't verbalize really what she needed. So don't expect someone to read your mind. Hi, don't expect someone to read your mind. Sorry. This is being live streamed and people just cringed from just hearing that projected. So if someone expresses to you the need for physical presence, take it seriously. Even if it feels silly to you. Like, haven't I given enough to you already? Even if it feels silly to you, do it. If you don't, you might be communicating something you don't intend. Hannah, can you pass this? Give this to Justin. Oh, sorry. Oh, here's 2. Where on... See, aren't I prepared? Nice pack. So we're going to be on page 4 in the packet next. Okay, so I've only ever heard that, well, and if I have been told this scripture differently than tithes, it was because I wasn't listening when they were saying it. So I've never thought of it this way. But the scripture, give and it shall be given to you. Have you ever thought about that in terms of relationship? I haven't. I've only ever thought of it when it came to tithes and offerings. But give and it shall be given to you. Think of this relationship-wise. Give and it shall be given to you. Good measure, pressed down and shaken together, and running over will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. So, I mean, I have seen the direct result of that. Whenever someone's poured into my life, it just flows out, and then you want to give them back, and then you want to give that person back, and then you know what I mean? It's just this direct result of someone giving to you. So, based off of that scripture, if you give, then yeah, it will be given to you. All right, so that's the thing to keep in mind. All right. We have covered, oh no, sorry, I missed a page. If you measure out sparingly, then what will happen? Yep, then you'll get sparingly. If you give love extravagantly, then you'll get love extravagantly. So that just it's a beautiful thing. And sometimes I think we struggle the most with that whenever we're tired, or we're just kind of like, I don't have enough, whatever. But it is an amazing thing is that whenever you give freely, or the person that you love or in relationship with gives freely, you do want to respond in turn. And you somehow aren't as tired. It's not as hard whenever you do that. 2 Corinthians 8:7 says, just as you excel in everything, in faith, in speech, in knowledge, in complete earnestness, and in your love for us, see that you also excel in this grace of giving. So these people had ultimate faith. They excelled in everything. The words that they spoke, what they knew, they were earnest, they loved people, but they needed help with the giving part. And we're not talking about finances, we're talking about self, the gift of presence. So for gifts, if this is someone's love language, and if you are married, pick your spouse. If you're not married, pick the next person who in your life is kind of the most pivotal person. Give them at least a gift at least 3 times a week. Okay? And one of them must not require spending any money. All right? Be deliberate. But the example in the book was a guy said that he was on a walk and he picked up a twig and he gave it to his wife. And then the wife brought the twig to their counseling session, and the doctor was like, what? And she said, oh my gosh, when he told me what this meant, I just started crying because he said that this twig was just delicate and just vulnerable, and that's how he feels when he's with me. And he just, and the doctor's like, oh, good. I'm glad you understood what that meant. But it didn't cost him anything, but it meant so much. Just that little. So just be deliberate. That's what the act of giving gifts is all about. So last story for this chapter. This was someone that he was counseling too. Trying to see where so she said that she was on the brink, she hated her husband. She was on the brink of just completely, I'm done with you, period. So they went to his version of this marriage conference. They went to the Love Languages conference. And she said that after that, he started doing all these incredible things. He came home on a Wednesday. He brought all the kids a box of Cracker Jacks, brought her a potted plant. One day, he brought her a flower. The other day, he just called her and said, hey, I think I just want to take you out to eat tonight. I have a babysitter lined up. The other day, and she was on cloud 9 because her love language, her primary love language was gifts, and he had it their whole married life, because he was so tight as a tick about budget. None of this stuff happened, and And he said, and because she finally asked him, what in the world is going on? Like, I'm loving this, but I'm kind of afraid, like, it's just going to stop. And like, I'm feeling so loved, but is this going to stop? And he said, I realized what your love language was. And I realized that our whole time married, I haven't been loving you. I have loved you, but I haven't been showing you love in a way that you understand. So that's why you feel unloved. And the Dr. Chapman actually asked the husband, like, so did you see a difference in her after that week? And he said, oh my gosh, like she was like night and day in response. So it's like it didn't require a lot. It was just this deliberate thought. I mean, that's the thing is like, I literally, which I've been struggling with this. I think I might have to start cutting back, but don't tell Aaron. But about Diet Pepsi. And I'm telling you, when there's a sale at Food Line and I come home at the end of work and in my garage I see cases of Diet Pepsi, I say out loud, Lord, what did I do to deserve this man? And I feel so loved because I just see that, just a little, just that. I mean, so, and it doesn't have to be that. Sometimes it's a deliberate act. Like I drove up into the garage one time and Aaron had put up a note that just said, I'm so glad you're home. I love you. Just for when I pulled in. And it didn't cost him anything, but a little bit of time to write down. And so it's just something for the people that you love. I mean, it could be your kids. Just leaving them a note by like whenever they're gone for the day and you just want them to have a note when they come home, or your parents, or just be deliberate with the people that you love. Okay? Yeah. Or don't forget to pay that bill. Love you. Bye. Yeah. Real life notes. Yes. I mean, and honestly, I remember like my mom, I just don't remember growing up and her ever saying anything bad about anybody. I know that that's not realistic because most people do. I do. I mean, everybody does except for my mother. And, but like I would get lunches and she would write on the napkin, I love you. I hope you're having the best day. Or, and I kept them for years. It was the sweetest thing ever. I kept them and then finally threw them away because I'm just like, I can't hoard these things. But, it's just be deliberate. Okay, so that was gifts. I've somehow lost pages. The next one is acts of service. And I know that there are a couple people in here. Acts of service is your thing. So I was hoping that y'all would be here. So acts of service are the love languages in which a person experiences emotional wholeness when chores or tasks are done for his or her benefit. Okay? So do you know how uncommon it is to have two people in relationship who have the same love language? It's very uncommon. So because I know that there is a couple in here who it is, so Amber and Justin. So let me ask you this, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot. But since your love language is the same, do you always feel like you communicate your love language to each other effectively? 100% of the time? Okay, so that's the thing. And the reason why is because even though you might have the same primary love language, there are different dialects within that, right? So you can go, like we've said it before, just because English is the whole country's primary love language doesn't mean you don't go to Parkton and hear a different dialect than you would go to Boston, right? So it's just one of those things that it's not just easy skating just because you have the same love language, right? So we're on page 4 in your packet. When you were young, what were some of the chores that you were expected to do? Okay. Yeah, watch the kids. Yeah, empty the dishwasher. Kyle?
I didn't have any chores. It was written on the back of the bill too.
No?
I never had chores. Yeah, but I feel like that wasn't really like a chore. Like it was just like,
Because you live there, you should keep that room clean. Oh, that's so sweet. Well, I didn't have that. sometimes my mom, I would walk in and my room would be completely rearranged. Nothing would be different. It would just be rearranged, and I loved it. But in that, she would be throwing away things that really need to be thrown, and I never really even realized they were gone. That was interesting too. But like my dad, I mean, it was Saturday mornings. We would clean the bathroom, right? And by we, I mean I'd clean my bathroom. And has anybody ever heard of Ajax? The powder that turns color, and then you have to scrub like nobody's business to get it all off. So he would come in, he'd put the water on in the shower, do the Ajax, and then I would have to scrub it off. And then he'd come in white glove treatment, make sure it was all gone, right? Which I'm really still not that good of a cleaner. I don't know. That didn't do me any good. But, I mean, there were certain chores that I had to do. I didn't love it. I still can't stand to clean a bathroom. Still. I don't mind vacuuming. I don't mind dusting. But cleaning a bathroom, ugh. Aaron does that, which, Lord bless him. So that was what I was expected to do. Did you have a reward or consequence if you didn't do it? Yeah.
Hard one for me because it was all my responsibility anyways.
Yeah.
All that stuff, so it wasn't really a chore. It was my responsibility.
It was just a requirement.
I got put in timeout.
Timeout. My dad didn't believe in timeouts. He believed in the belt.
Yeah, mine had the belt and the 2x4.
Oh,
Yeah, it was not fun.
no, I didn't have that. Thank the Lord.
Stand up with your arms across.
I never had that either. Thank the Lord. I'm not good with balance. So that's the thing is that we all had, well, not we all, most of us had rewards or consequences if you didn't do your chores. So when you have a disagreement with the person that you're in relationship with, like, do you feel like a lot of your disagreements go back to the same thing? Yeah? Is it kind of the same thing that you, like, don't see eye to eye on? I'm not going to ask what it is, but, and it seems to come up again and again. And so what are some of the things that you used to do or that used to be done for you that filled up your love tanks in each other, and why did you stop? Is there anybody who would feel comfortable sharing? Yeah, because you're the one for so many people. She did what with your clothes? Well, so at least you know your why you stopped. That's good.
It was keep arguing and fighting over this, or just don't do his laundry.
That
Just stop doing it.
I feel like there's wisdom in that. Yeah. So anybody else? Anybody else have something? Or is there something that you used to do as far as acts of service that you stopped doing and maybe you should start back? Anybody? Oh, Hannah, is there something you want to share? Okay. Saw some deliberate looks over here. Huh? I have never been the cook in the family because Aaron's so much better at it than me. I only did it out of necessity. Yeah, he tells you, you should have done this. Same. Yeah. Well, I'm just like, I measured out, and it still doesn't taste as good as Aaron does. Let's try this. So that would be the thing is that if and it's something to think about. It's not necessarily you might be able to regurgitate it now, but think about that, especially for those of you who when we took the test about love languages, you scored high with acts of service, okay? Think about things that you maybe used to do for the person who that is their love language. Maybe you should revisit. Because sometimes even acts of service are because of different seasons of life, and your ability to do is different pre-kids. Your ability to do, that's the thing is that, like, I found that Aaron and I have more ability to do things for each other because our kids are now grown. Like they don't need us for every single little thing. So seasons do change that acts of service. So that's just always something to think. But it doesn't mean that you can know, like, you can't assume that your relationship will sustain over this lengthy period of time of the raising of kids to get you back to that place, right? You have to kind of adapt to what's realistic for that season. Does that make sense? So a prime example in the Bible of acts of service is with Mary and Martha, right? So Mary expressed her love to Jesus by sitting at his feet, giving him that quality time, affirmation. Martha was showing her love to Jesus by doing. And so that's a really strong indicator that her primary love language was acts of service. And so she absolutely probably blew her gasket at Mary because she was thinking, you're not loving Jesus the way that I am. You're supposed to be serving him. That's what, we're supposed to be doing.
What I heard the other day when I was digging into this is that mainly she was distracted. All of a sudden she's seeing those 12 disciples, Jesus, and probably many more. And she's like, what do I got to cook? My house has got to clean. There's enough places to sit.
All the things.
She was distracted.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is the thing too. I mean, acts of service, because it can take up so much time, it can distract you too from being present in the moment. Did anybody bring their Bible or have the ability to look up something for me? Yes. Okay. Look up John 13. We're doing good.
I feel like under pressure and then I start screaming.
Yeah. Don't feel under pressure. That's the good thing. I think, it'd be cool if there were 50 people in here, but I also like it small too, so we can share. John 13, 1 through 5, verses 1 through 5.
It was before Passover, and Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and to return to the Father. He had always loved his followers in this world, and he loved them to the very end. Even before the evening meal started, the devil had made Judas, the son of Simon, decided to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that he had come from God and would go back to God. He also knew that the Father had given him complete power. So during the meal, Jesus got up, removed his outer garment, and wrapped a towel around his waist. He put some water in a large bowl, then he began to wash the disciples' feet and dry them with the towel he was wearing.
And read verses 12 through 15.
After Jesus had washed his disciples' feet, not washed.
He watched them while he washed them.
Yeah, right. And had put his outer garment back on. He sat down again, and then he said, do you understand what I have done? You call me your teacher and Lord, and you should, because that is who I am. And if your Lord and teacher has washed your feet, you should do the same for each other. I have set the example, and you should do for each other exactly what I've done for you.
So, what act of service did Jesus perform in the scripture?
It's a big one in this one, because
Well,
their feet were so dirty. It means so much.
well, just the basic of it. He watched and washed their feet, right? So, what did Jesus want for them to learn through this act? What do you think? Oh, y'all are gonna give some input here soon. What do y'all think? What do y'all think that he wanted the disciples to learn?
There's a couple things that I feel in there. For one, clean, help each other clean. But at the same time, I see that cloth. As soon as I started to read it, he took his own cloth off of him and then he put it back on. That means something, right?
Just the images and stuff. Well, and two, I think that even at its most basic essence, it's I'm the Christ, but I don't mind getting dirty and washing feet, right? So acts of service are so huge because even Jesus served. And he didn't just, serve them a plate of food, but he got down and washed their feet. I mean, I have been really, some of my most uncomfortable moments in church have been at foot washings. And I usually would try to pair with Michelle because I'm like, your feet are clean. I'm okay washing your feet. Because, you see some tough things. But that's with people who are wearing shoes. I mean, who are fully covered shoes. there's no telling how their feet were, right? But Jesus got down, was deliberate, and washed every single one of them. I'm telling you.
Not only did he get dirty while he was washing his feet, but he also put the dirty cloth back on
Mm,
and carried that dirt,
yeah.
that uncleanness.
For me, it's also about value. Like you can't outsearch somebody type deal. Just like with the gifts of giving.
Mm-hmm.
Like just because just because I help you build your house, like and the value that has,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't mean that you help me get to where I need to go. Like there's no comparison.
Yeah.
When I think when Jesus helped them wash their feet, like that was serious value. Like he was helping them wash their feet. That's normally done themselves.
Mm-hmm.
What else do they have to offer back to them?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in our motivation, like in all of this, even though, our repetitive kind of thing is if you give, you're going to get back all of these things. But really, the principle of showing love in the kingdom is to give without expectation of return. That's really where real love comes in. And that's where Jesus can love us, even when we really don't have anything to offer but ourselves. And sometimes ourselves feels not like a lot in the moment. In culture, oftentimes, those who serve are looked upon as less as those who don't. But that's the opposite of the kingdom. Jesus says that the least are the greatest in the kingdom. And that's the thing. We're not even necessarily talking about, physical roles as far as, job titles or whatever. But it's that servant's heart mentality. That's where it comes in about the widow with her mite in the giving. And her giving was even greater consideration to the Lord than those who gave a lot, because that's all she had to give. But she gave it all freely. And so in relationship, criticizing and making demands of each other leaves little room for genuine expression of love through acts of service. So we want to, we are advocates for expressing what we need, but how we express something, it changes everything, the tone and then the words that are used. So what's a more effective way that we can make our needs known, right? Because we just don't want to just say what our needs are and just to get them out in the atmosphere. We want them to be known in a way that it would kind of cultivate change, right? That's the whole point of voicing the change. So for you, and this is for you to think about and for you to really ponder, because it will be helpful. What would it look like in your relationship? Consider your needs. Look at the needs that are being met, and just celebrate those. Look at the needs that you don't feel like are being met, and think of a way to express those in a way that is constructive and leading to change, right? For you both. And then that's the next page in the packet. Actually, I had skipped one, but it's the 7 to start with. So this is specifically for the people who acts of service is your primary love language. But like we said, everybody kind of dips into each one. When you're in any kind of relationship, you dip into each one. So make a list of 7 specific chores that you can do as an act of service and assign a point value, 1 to 10 for each chore. So if it's something you hate, but you're going to do it for them, you're going to assign a higher point value. Like maybe going to... Is there something that you go to with Michael that you don't like to really go to, but you do because you love him? A car show. So a car show might be number 10. Or for Michael, you don't like shopping, okay? But if you go shopping and you're joyful in the whole time you shop, that might be a 10. If you go shopping but you are not joyful, that might be a 5. So make that list. So for each chore, write down based off of how much you dislike it, you don't dislike it, and then you put that on there in the point value. Once your list is complete, you have a starting point for doing acts of service. And with the point values, you also have an idea of how big of an impact each service is likely to have. The higher the score, the fuller the love tank will be. Okay? All right. Okay. So, no one likes to be forced to do anything. No one likes to be bossed about. I do not like to be bossed about. I struggle with that because I do know that sometimes bossing is good. But in fact, love is always freely given. To be love, it's freely given. Love cannot be demanded. You can't say, love me, and it just happened, right? We can give requests of things of each other, but we must never demand anything. Now, expressing your needs is one thing, but demanding it, not necessarily going to benefit you. Requests give direction to love, but demands stop the flow of love in any relationship. Valerie, can you read Colossians 3:23 through 24, please? Sorry. Yep.
And whatever you do, do it heartily, as to the Lord and not to men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the reward of the inheritance, for you serve the Lord Christ.
Yep. Okay, so whatever we do. So I think a lot of times whenever we read the Bible, well, at least, a lot of times in my life growing up, I always kind of translate it to what it looks like in church. But he says, whatever you do, do freely as unto the Lord. The Lord created relationships. And so even in the maintaining of relationships, we need to be deliberate, freely give. And whether acts of service is our primary love language or it isn't, basing our scriptures off of our relationships off of that scripture will only benefit us, right? Do it as unto the Lord. Love. I'm gonna love my daughter. Try to be a good mother to my daughter as if I was doing it for the Lord, because that's a role in my life that He's mandated for me. So I want to do. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense to you? So I'm gonna read in the book the part about Dave and Mary. You guys are doing good. You're tracking with me. I'm so happy.
While she's getting to where she's going, you hear YouTube back there, you guys got the acts of service. I can see you guys later saying, it's your turn for acts of service, change the button.
Yeah. It's like this might come back to bite you in the booty, but it'll benefit overall, I promise. Okay. So, he says, okay. So the story about Mary and Dave, like they both had acts of service, but they were speaking different dialects, right? They were wanting to communicate a certain way, but they weren't understanding each other. They weren't on the same page. So I just wanted to read this. It's easy to work at the wrong things. A husband could spend an entire long weekend doing chores, like working on a bathroom, right? Raking leaves, preparing the lawn for winter, winding up hoses, putting them away, winterizing the cars, pulling holiday decorations out of the attic, cutting logs for the fireplace, and not add a drop to his wife's love tank. On the other hand, that same husband could bring home some Chinese takeout, clean the kitchen afterward, and then put the kids to bed on his own while the wife was wiped out after a long day and fill her love tank to overflowing, right? So it's the effort was obviously there, but if it's not, I mean, that's the thing, is that we don't just want to work ourselves to death just to say that we're trying to love you but not doing it effectively. What if we can do half the effort and then be full to overflowing because we're loving them in the way that they feel the most love, right? So for this, I just want to emphasize there are a few points on it. First, what we do for each other before, when a relationship first starts, is no indicator of what we will do as it goes on, like as time goes. It's not an obvious this is going to be forever thing. So deliberate effort is important. This is specific to marriage. Before marriage, we're carried along by the force of an in-love obsession. After marriage, we revert to being the people we were before we fell in love. Our actions are influenced by the model of our parents, our own personality, our perceptions of love, our emotions, needs, and desires. So really, it's kind of like you're on your own kind of high of being in love. So you're not thinking really clearly. You're just kind of going off of just emotion. And when that emotion comes down, you're going to revert back to what you know most of the time. So one thing is certain about our behavior. It will not be the same behavior we exhibited when we are being caught up in that feeling of being in love. Love is a choice and cannot be coerced. Once you decide to make requests of each other rather than demands, your relationship can turn around. But if you keep demanding instead of just thinking of a way to communicate effectively, then you could be driving wedges, because criticism and demands tend to drive wedges. With enough criticism, you may get acquiescence from your spouse. They may do what you want, but it probably won't feel or be actually really intended to be an expression of love. You can give guidance by making requests, but you cannot create the will to love. And then criticisms about one's behavior provide the clearest clue to what that person's primary love language is. So if, like for me with Aaron, I mean, mine is words of affirmation. And sometimes I'm so high maintenance. I'm just like, babe, just tell me I'm pretty. Babe, just tell me I'm sweet. Just tell me how much you love me. And, you know, like that's the thing is that when whatever your primary love language is, that's what you're going to request the most of, right? Or that's what you'll complain the most about. That's a pretty good indicator. So if someone is doing that, then that's probably telling you what they're really asking you for. So people tend to criticize the person they're with most loudly in an area where they themselves have the deepest emotional need. And that criticism is an ineffective way of pleading for love. All right, so to kind of end the acts of service part, he kind of poses the thing, do you want a doormat or do you want a partner in whatever relationship? Someone who has been performing an act of service for 20 years, that might not have been an expression of love. They might have been doing it out of fear or guilt or resentment because they felt like that's what they were supposed to do, especially in households who kind of like cling very strongly to like gender roles, you know, like what does the man do? What does the wife do? And so if a man was raised in a household where his mom did all the things at the house and he handled, you know, the finances, he'll expect to come home and everything be done just right, you know, and dinner on the table and stuff, right? And acts of service might be his primary love language. And she's like, what if it's not hers? And to hers, it might be quality time or whatever. So it's like, it depends on, that's where it's really important to, if someone leans really strongly to gender roles, kind of see where the root of that kind of comes from and delve into that, I would say, in relationship. I have not experienced that a lot in marriage, honestly. Aaron and I have always done whoever's home first cooks, you know. If the house has to be cleaned, we both do it. I literally didn't know anything about blue job, pink job until Hannah. Like, when it comes to the trash, she's like, Mom, that's a blue job. You know, like, you know, I didn't even know that that's what they say. So, I mean, it was just kind of like we just did it if we had to. But I will say I have never been a good trash taker-outer, ever, ever, ever. I will let it overflow before I take out the trash. I don't know why. It's a thing. So, personal failure. So, if acts of service is someone's primary love language, consider serving them, but in a way by loving a person that they love. Okay, so like Justin, since Amber's primary love language is acts of service, then you would show affection by doing something for her grandma, right? Caring attentively for, she's like, just do it for me. Caring attentively for something that person cares about, you know, just kind of thinking outside the box. And so they even said you can print note cards with saying, today I will show my love for you by, and then put the task on it. So, I mean, even if you were really trying to be an A+ student in this class, you would at the beginning of the week, like instead of meal prep, like acts of service prep, and like write out like 7 note cards, and then you can just pick it out. Today I'm going to show my love for you by blah, 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 right? That's actually pretty good. I just came up with that with myself. And so also, when someone is gone, you could also, with your child, or your children, when they walk in the door, shout, surprise, we love you, and then tell them what you did. He also translates this, which, you know, this would apply to Sarah, I think primarily right now. But like if someone is on deployment or gone because of the military or gone from a long trip or whatever, then, I mean, how wonderful would it be to come in after being gone for a couple days and then saying, surprise, we love you, and whatever it is that we did, right? My rule was always, if I'm gone, I don't care how messy the house gets. I just want to be clean when I get home. I don't care, you know, I don't care if you don't make your bed while I'm gone on this trip or whatever, but I want the house to be clean when I come home. And without fail, and it was usually Hannah, it was clean. So that's the thing, is that the key and the thing we keep going back to is be deliberate. Be deliberate. Okay, we are done with acts of service. Last one, physical touch. This is the one that, I struggled with a little bit. Just because, we have a mix of relationships in here, and I was told I don't have to make it icky. So that's good. All right, so love language for physical touch is, and you go to page, sorry, y'all. When this printed out, it printed out front and back instead of just on each on its own. And so that's where my struggle is. So go to page 7 in the packet. We're on physical touch, making good time. Physical touch is a love language in which a person experiences emotional wholeness through human contact. Okay? A lot of people, this is your love language. And really, it comes down to a lot of times biology. I mean, because we are made with so many nerve endings and everything, it's like, your body responds whenever you're touched. And sometimes that's how people feel the most loved. So what are some of the most memorable physical touches you've ever experienced? It could be your first kiss. You don't have to share. Or holding the hand of a grandparent. Like for me, when my aunt passed away, I sang to her for 2 hours straight in the room with her. I believe she heard me, but her eyes were closed, but I had a hold of her hand, and man, she was gripping that thing but that was a touch point, and I'm not a big physical touch person. I had to learn to become that because my kids kind of were more touchy-feely, but that meant something in that moment. To me, I will always remember that moment, that touch. Does anybody have anything like that they want to share? Mm. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I mean, and that's the thing, to the point of a couple love languages ago, there's nothing wrong with expressing if something isn't yours, and then you show affection in that way to a person, because then they actually feel more loved when you do. Whenever Amber comments on a post, it's like, whoa, she loves me. Or, because I am I'll text something or whatever, and Aaron does the same thing to me. He'll thumbs up it, or I'll give him this big soliloquy paragraph of how incredible I think he is, blah, blah, blah. And then it's, love you too. That's usually the most I get, love you too. But I was expressing, because that is my primary love language. That's oftentimes how I express love, by my primary love language. And to someone who, if it isn't theirs, just, doesn't mean you don't love in the way that you feel the most loved, but sometimes the response isn't as if it's their primary. Does that make sense to everybody? So physical touch. It could be a hug. It could be just a pat on the shoulder. If that is your primary love language, you will feel loved if someone just kind of encounters you in that way. So that's just something to think about. I know that there's a couple people in here, it is your primary love language, and so, it's biological, really, your response. I just want to... Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you just such a sweet little boo-boo bear. But I mean, I think probably partly because I am what I am, but partly because I think, kids obviously don't pop out speaking these eloquent phrases of, Mommy, my love language is acts of service. You know what I mean? It's, you touch them, they feel loved, right? I mean, so to your point, and that actually is written in bold on my paper, read part in book about babies and physical touch. So I'm going to do that. It says, hold on. Babies who are held, stroked, and kissed develop a healthier emotional life than those who are left for long periods of time without physical contact. Of the 5 senses, touching, unlike the other 4, is not limited to one localized part of the body, because tiny tactile, is that it? Is that how I say it? Tactile? tactile receptors are located throughout the body. When those receptors are touched or pressed, nerves carry impulses to the brain. The brain interprets these impulses, and we perceive that the thing that is touched is warm or cold. That's how we get, those kind of responses. Causes pain or pleasure, and we may also interpret it as loving or hostile. And some parts are more sensitive to others, but our purpose is not to understand the neurological basis of the sense of touch, but rather its psychological importance. So when a baby is born, they only know what they feel. So that's why physical touch is so important. To the person whose primary love language is physical touch, the message will be far louder than the words "I hate you" or "I love you." Physical abuse is always wrong, detrimental in any relationship, but it's particularly devastating to a person whose primary love language is touch. And a tender hug communicates love to any child, but it shouts love to the child whose primary love language is physical touch, and the same is true for adults. So it's like you wonder, and I've wondered this, like whenever you hear a story of, a married couple who maybe one commits adultery, and it's not emotional, it's, a physical act of adultery, and they're able to patch it up and move forward. And then you have some people who they can never like get past it. They try, that they can't seem to. I would imagine that if your primary love language is physical touch, if you know that your spouse has committed that act, that would feel harder to you. If your spouse, but if yours is words of affirmation or quality time, and it's an emotional adultery, then that might be harder for you. It really, a lot of it does come back to this as far as your ability to move past something. I asked Hannah this question, and she said yes to all these things. So if someone offered you $50 to go an entire day without touching anyone, would you do it? Without anyone, $50. What about $500 to go in and, it's not, you can't touch anybody. What about $500 to go an entire week? So if you can't, it's not like a work thing. It's just relational. Okay. So, yeah, you have kids too, Jonathan. Would you go $5,000 for an entire month?
You'd have to move out for that month.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that would be the thing, is that it's like for most of us, that would be impossible to actually do, but that's kind of, if you would freely actually do it, that's a pretty strong indicator that this is not your primary love language, right? If physical touch is your primary love language, you can't, which I'm surprised you said, yeah, you could. Yeah, for a month? No, I just burped in the microphone. Huh? Yeah, yeah. Good answer, Michael. Good answer. No, but I mean, that's the thing. If you're okay, I've obviously said this over and over. Words of affirmation is mine. If I went a whole month without hearing something kind from my spouse, I would feel shriveled up like a prune. I wouldn't be able to go $5,000, but I could go that for a month without being touched, probably. I mean, it would be hard. It would be really hard, but I think I could do it for $5,000. I don't think Aaron could, because his is physical touch. So that's the thing, is that it's just an indicator of how important this love language would be to you in the feeling of being loved. So I read that. So in a not so good part of it also, one of the things to consider too, so we always think of things in the best, bright, and shiny terms. But if someone has experienced physical trauma by physical or, sexual abuse or what have you, and their primary love language, that's always incredibly difficult to move forward from. But if your primary love language is physical touch, some people it might take significant help to move forward from it because of that. So that's something to consider. I think whenever we are doing relationship in life with people, that's why this book, it's not even necessarily just for, marriage relationships. It's for all the people that we interact with. Why did that person go through this? This person went through the same thing, but they seem to be able to rebound quicker than this person. How did this person go through this trauma that I feel like I would be shriveled up and in a corner crying my eyes out, and then this person seems to be keeping on doing life and bounce back? You know, a lot of it is because of what their primary love language is and how that impacted them, right? So look for ways to show, even if physical touch is not your primary love language, look for ways to show this love language, even with family and friends. But if it is the person that you're with, their primary love language, look for ways to show them even in public. Okay, so like if Aaron and I, like, we're at Jill's house for a birthday party or whatever, and he's sitting there in the chair, and I just walk by and I just reach down and give him a hug, or I just kind of like pat his back or whatever, it's like saying, even with all of these people in the house, even with all of these people around us, I still see you. And that's really what it boils down to. For any of these love languages, I know my life is crazy. I know your life is crazy, but we still are taking the time to see each other, right? Because, I mean, if at the end of the day we don't, then, I mean, my gracious, work our whole lives to just, you know, no one is for sure, right? So Hannah, you have your phone? Read 1 Corinthians 7, 3-5, please. 1 Corinthians 7, 3-5. First Corinthians 7, 3-5.
The husband should give to his wife her something rights, and likewise the wife to her husband, for the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise the husband does not have authority over his body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourselves to prayer, but then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control.
So I don't know why I had you read that specific scripture, to be honest with you.
It doesn't matter if it's sexual or not. It's
Intimacy. Thank you, Jennifer. Intimacy. So also in Proverbs 5:15-23, it says, and this is one that kind of, I go back to myself, like, mentally. Drink water from your own well. Share your love only with your wife. Why spill the water of your springs in the streets, having sex with just anyone? You should reserve it for yourselves. Never share it with strangers. Let your wife be a fountain of blessing for you. Rejoice in the wife of your youth. What it goes back to is, as we go through life, there's going to always be kind of sometimes, how do I say this? We need to sow deliberately into the relationships we have and not take them for granted. Because if we do, no one is infallible to look for what they need emotionally or physically somewhere else. Does that make sense? That's the thing, is that we want to make sure that we're meeting each other's needs in a way that the other person feels loved, because if not, we all have the need to feel love. And it doesn't mean that the other person is exempt from, responsibility for their choices, but you can't expect someone to feel lack of love and not sometimes fall to temptation emotionally or looking outwardly or whatever. That's where, like, if your love language is physical and you are in a married relationship, that's something to guard. Correct. Yes, intentionally. Or like it being like I'm mad at you, so I'm not, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. Because if someone's love language is physical touch, that can only go for so long before, they need to have needs met. And it's just the truth. And so we have to speak the love language And not just physical, acts of service, words of affirmation, gifts, quality time, being deliberate is very important. Just don't take the relationships for granted. So the last kind of section, almost done, y'all. Love is a choice. So this is page 8 in your packet. So how many choices do you feel like you make on your average day? I mean, like, just your choice. I'm getting out of bed in the morning. I'm going, because I don't know of a lot of people aside from Aaron on a volleyball tournament day that just want to bounce out the bed, right? You want to stay in there. So even our very first act in the morning of like moving past our natural instinct of wanting to stay in the bed is kind of moving beyond our want to, right? That's our first choice. Emotional contentment is an ideal state in which both of you, your deepest emotional needs are being met. You feel secure in each other's love. You give creative energy to wholesome projects outside the marriage, but continue or relationship and continue to keep the relationship growing and exciting. So this is the goal. Emotional contentment is the goal, right? So everyone has a basic need, married or not, basic need for security, self-worth, and significance. You want to be valued. You want to feel significant. And right now, in your present circumstances, whatever those are, what does that look like for you? This is a question that you just need to ask yourself. What does you feeling secure, feeling high self-worth, feeling significant, what does that look like for you? And whenever you are in relationship with others, it's awesome to know that you can help meet someone's basic need and impact them at their core. Today, so we had our business meeting, and a girl who she's probably mid-20s, she got up and spoke. I thought she did well. She didn't seem nervous. She did great, I thought. And I saw her in the parking lot. She was driving, she rolled down her window. I said, "You did so awesome. I was really proud of you. You did really good when you got up and spoke." And didn't think anything of it, got in my car, whatever. She texted me later on in the day, and she said, this is what she said. I took a picture because it reminds me how important it is to just go ahead and encourage people when you think about it. It said, "Thank you for the compliment this morning on the way to your car. You probably haven't thought anything of it, but it meant a lot to me. Often I still feel very out of my league, so I appreciate someone who's experienced like you to give me some confidence." I mean, and all I said was, you did a really, really good job up there talking. So your ability to help someone feel self-worth or significant or whatever, that's not just a marriage relationship. That's not just a romantic relationship. That's in your relationships. It's trying to be more deliberate because, that's the thing is that, and I'm guilty of this, I am, is that sometimes, you start getting busy and you don't do it. You don't. And then you realize, man, I should have encouraged that person, or I should have made them feel valued or whatever. So the good thing is that you can start now. You can start trying in little ways to help someone feel valued or significant. The next page is just something for you to look at, to do it at home. So it's learning someone's love languages, why someone that you're in a relationship with might choose not to learn it. Like if words of affirmation wasn't something that you ever heard your parents say to each other, that might not be something that comes naturally to you. So that's why you might not have initially learned it. But why might you choose to learn it? Because that's what makes Heather feel alive. Whenever, I tell her whatever, if Aaron was answering that for me, like why would I be deliberate about it? So the unlovely, that's the next page, the page after that. I just want you guys to kind of look through this packet because I printed these out because I knew we were going to be covering a lot. Loving the unlovely. The unlovely is someone who no longer shows love to the person they're in relationship with due to an empty love tank. And they make it difficult for the person to continue in a relationship. And this is honestly where anyone could get to if they go on empty for too long. You can become the unlovely just because you no longer have any love left to give. You're on empty. You don't even remember what it's like to be full. And so it's difficult for you to continue in relationship. So that's where, and also the thing is like keep referring to this just because it's obviously love tank, But I mean, is it right that if you go on empty for too long, you can do damage to the rest of the car? So, like, that's the thing, is that if you go on empty for too long, your car will shut down. But the good news is that you can work at it to fill it back up again, right? That doesn't mean that it's just, it's over, I'm done. You can put work into it, but the goal would be don't get on empty because it would be more difficult. So to end this beautiful, beautiful Bible study, and I appreciate y'all, being here and hanging with me. The ties that bind is the last page. So I want you to use the biblical image of a cord of 3 strands. So we know the cord of 3 strands can't be easily broken, right? Use it as a guideline. So draw and label cords, and whenever you're able on this page, draw and label cords that wind together to give a relationship strength. For example, one cord could be the vow you made if it's your marriage relationship when you got married, for better or for worse. Another cord could be a common link in relationship, like, you have children together, or if it's a friendship, your spiritual beliefs, you have a shared history. Like, those are all cords that can work to bind you closer together. And use the thickness of each cord to indicate how big of a factor that is. So, like, for me and Aaron, like, a big cord is our shared belief in the Lord. A big cord is we share children together. Those are big things that even if we were going through a hard time, we'd revert back to, like, these cords that are holding us together. So sometimes it's good to see things visually to remind yourself, the things that bind, the things that tie you to a person. So I just encourage you. I know we covered a lot tonight. I know it's been, a little bit wonky too, doing this once a month. It's hard to refresh and stuff. I took this class initially, I think I was 16 or 17 years old. And I still say that it's one of top 5 most important things I ever heard in church, like including sermons, was this, because like, I used it in my parenting. I used it as a 22-year-old who had no clue how to be a wife and a mother at the same time. It's or like a 22-year-old figuring out a brand new career that, there was more pressure on to do because of having 2 kids. This applies to every relationship you will encounter in your lifetime. So, it can be something that it's a resource for, healthy relationship. And none of us are an island. We need each other. Does anybody have anything? Any questions? Did I cover? Covered probably more than you wanted. Anybody? Yeah. She's like, Mommy, I've never had $5,000 in 1 month. Like, that's a lot of money for me, too. That's a lot of money. So that's the thing, is that I appreciate y'all coming. I know that it's hard on Wednesday, in the middle of a week. But I appreciate you in investing in relationship. So does anybody want to volunteer to pray? Anybody? Huh?